We have lots to talk about here today, including the Oilers forcing Game 7. They've come all the way back to tie the Stanley Cup Final at 3 games apiece. Game 7 will decide it all Monday night in Florida. We'll take a look at what's happened so far in that series. Plus, we have some other updates around the league, including breaking news that the Winnipeg Jets top prospect Rutger McGroarty is on the trade block. We'll discuss what led to that and what it could mean and how it could all play out. Plus, we have some other trade talk around the Sens Bruins updates on Linus Ullmark, another young player who might be bound for Ottawa as well via trade with the Los Angeles Kings, news updates and trade rumors regarding Vegas and Montreal as well. Plus, we have some other updates, including a signing in LA. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. First, let's start with another huge win by the Edmonton Oilers. Game 6 was another really fun affair last night in Edmonton, Alberta. Of course, that barn was rocking. It was another great crowd. Certainly the passion is very evident there. They want the Stanley Cup, and the Oilers are determined by the looks of things to come all the way back. They pick up a 5-1 win. They've won the last 3 games. I know after the first 3 games, it looked pretty bleak that the Oilers were done and the Panthers were bound to win the first Stanley Cup ever in franchise history, and the Oilers have done a complete reversal here and have Florida's number in every aspect of the game. I mean, their penalty kill has been amazing. They're not only killing off all the penalties, but they're scoring shorthanded goals too. So their penalty kill has outdueled Florida's power play on more ways than one, which is phenomenal. They're getting depth scoring. This team shows that it's a lot deeper than people give it credit for. Stuart Skinner's been awesome. You know, like the goals are getting Fogle, Henrique, McLeod, Darnell Nurse got another big empty net goal last night. Leon Draisaitl was a lot better. Didn't score, but he played a lot better and did get a couple of big assists. Stuart Skinner even got an assist on one of the empty net goals there as well. So a huge win. Barkov I thought was good for Florida. I mean, we had an early 2-0 lead for the Edmonton Oilers. Barkov scores, to make it 2-1. And it gets reversed, called back for offside challenge. And looking at these still frames, it looks like they did get the call right. It was only offside by a tiny bit, but it was offside. And as much as I know some Florida fans obviously don't like that, and I understand that the rule wasn't really created for those types of marginal calls, but at the end of the day, it is the rule, and the Oilers used their ability to challenge and have it overturned. I think it was a bit of a momentum shifter. Barkov did later eventually score. By the time he scored, though, the Oilers already had a third goal, so it was 3-1. And it was until the third period when that happened. And the Oilers had dominated most of the game. The Panthers had another sleepy start. Only had, I think, 2 shots in the first period. Second period was a lot better. The Florida Panthers got a lot more shots, generated a lot more chances, but they did not really get anything out of it. They get one from Barkov early in the third, and it was looking like it might be interesting, but they never got any more. The Oilers had a couple empty netters, and that's it. I mean, they're top guys. In Game 5, Tkachuk had finally scored for Florida, but he's been quiet for the most part of this series, even dating back to the previous round. Tkachuk has been not Matthew Tkachuk from last year at all. Not himself, not producing. Brandon Montour, this guy's a shadow of himself. Last year, he was amazing. This year he is not, and he's in a contract year. I really think that shoulder injury took more out of Montour maybe than we might have thought, but he hasn't been as good because they got Oliver Ekman-Larsson running power play 1 as a quarterback. To me, that's a major problem. Major problem. Ekman-Larsson is not a real power play 1 dynamic quarterback type of D. He's played well. I'll give him credit. He's taken a lot of crap over the years for his contracts between Arizona and Vancouver, and he's been better than he I guess he's now more better aligned with his contract. He's been decent, but I don't think he really should be your PP1 quarterback. And he's getting that role because Montour is not producing. Reinhardt's been quiet. Verhaeghe has been really quiet. Barkov has really been their only star player, kind of playing like a star player, and it's not enough. So we'll see. Game 7, Monday night in Florida, in Sunrise. It should be a huge opportunity for either team. We know the Cup's coming out. I think McDavid at this point probably has solidified the Conn Smythe, but I don't really think he cares. Bobrovsky was on pace to win it, but after giving up all those goals, I mean, the Edmonton Oilers have now scored, 18 goals in 3 games? I know some of them are empty netters, so it's not all on Bob, but still, that kind of wrecked his stats and it kind of wrecked his standings, I think, to get that. I think McDavid probably gets the Conn Smythe, to be honest, win or lose. But to be honest, I don't think he cares. I don't think he wants that trophy, especially if they don't win. But right now, everything's favoring Edmonton. So we'll see. The Panthers are now the ones facing all the adversity and backs up against the wall. So we'll see what happens. Should be a fun night on Monday. Some other news today. The Los Angeles Kings have signed former first-round pick, really high pick at that, Alex Turcotte. He gets a 3-year contract extension. Now, his entry-level deal just finally expired. It was pushed forward a couple of times because he wasn't getting NHL games. He's only played, I think it was 20 games total so far during his young career. Battled some injuries, some inconsistencies. He gets a 3-year deal, and it's a league minimum. So this coming season, it's still a 2-way, and then in years 2 and 3, it's a 1-way. So, I don't know. I mean, Turcotte, you would think would be poised for, a big step this year. I also wonder if this contract might make him a lot more tradable, because that is a good contract. So we'll see what the future holds for Turcotte in LA. I don't know what the odds are that he gets moved. I would have said decent, but I know based on what we've heard, some say in local media there, I don't know if it is reasonable or not, but we'll see. Obviously, LA's been busy lately trading Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I'm sure they have some other moves up their sleeves here, because they certainly haven't been pleased with how things have gone the past few years. I mean, they've nice to get back in the playoffs, but they haven't been able to get over that hump and win a series. So we will see where that goes. The big news of the day, though, is came from Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts podcast that came out this morning. Of course, right now, him and Jeff Merrick are doing a podcast after every playoff game. It comes out the following morning. I'm not sure what their schedule will be after Game 7. Obviously, it'll change. But the big news was that Winnipeg Jets top prospect, Rutger McGroarty, who was obviously, a 2022 first-round pick, 14th overall, heck of a player, looking like he's real promising. They're going to be top 9 forward for sure, maybe a top 6 guy, a guy who's kind of like a utility player. I think you could put him anywhere on your first 3 lines. I think he's going to play a skilled, heavy game. I don't know how much of the offensive part will translate to NHL just yet, so it's hard to say how high in the lineup he gets, but obviously playing at the University of Michigan, he had already not long ago or earlier in the offseason declared that his intention so far to go back to the University of Michigan for his junior season. That would be his 3rd year, and what caught a lot of people by surprise, because based on watching him play there, as well as with Team USA, like World Juniors and stuff, when he's been able to play there, like he looks ready, and it kind of caught a lot of people confused today. So essentially, we've heard from Elliot and what he's saying. Winnipeg media has chimed in as well. There's an Athletic article on this as well from their beat writer, and we kind of pieced it all together. So essentially, he had previously declared, like I said, his return to the University of Michigan, and this appears to have nothing to do with the idea that he doesn't want to play in Winnipeg, hates the city or the team. Like it's not about that. At least it doesn't appear to be. This really appears to be about his development and the plan. And essentially, the Jets, from what we're seeing from the Athletic article, did try to sign him. Like when he declared he was going to go back to school for a 3rd year, the Jets didn't really want that. They wanted to sign him and get him to Winnipeg. However, the path here seems to be that when they wanted to sign him, they wouldn't guarantee him that he'd be on the NHL roster. And that seems to be the problem. He wanted to go straight to the NHL. The Jets wouldn't promise that. It sounds like they probably told him, well, come try. I can't promise you that if you get there and it looks like you need time to develop in the minors, you might have to spend a little bit of time with the AHL team. I'm assuming that's kind of the path they told him. Like, you'll probably get a chance, play a few games, see how it goes, but we can't guarantee you that you're never going to the minors. Like, there is a bit of a, earn it type of approach. Not everything handed and given to you, which I do agree with. I don't think teams should be just handing over roster spots if they don't think their players are ready. A lot of organizations like to over-ripen their prospects. And, well, apparently this appears to be an issue because prior to all of that, he had nothing but good things to say about Winnipeg. Like in the 2 years since he's been drafted, any dialogue or any interviews he's done, it was always very, very positive. Nobody had any indication that he would not sign in Winnipeg and play with the Jets. But there's obviously, since his season has ended, and some things have changed, I guess, in how he feels. Some of it are saying that you take a look at how Cole Perfetti was handled this past year. He obviously had some struggles, and he was benched a lot, a healthy scratch. Look at Vinny Heinola, who's taken a very painfully slow path. They've been very, very slow to get him to the NHL. And it just looks like how they're kind of, handling their development and their prospects. He's not happy with it. And the fact that what he's told, like, you're not guaranteed to go over to the NHL, he just doesn't know that now that's the right organization for him. So essentially, like I said, things have changed for him since his NCAA season ended. So does this sound familiar to you? It sounds a lot like the Cutter Gauthier situation with the Flyers, doesn't it? It really does. Cutter Gauthier, again, after everything went down, the trade caught everybody's surprise. And we learned later that Gauthier was at one point open to signing with Philly. Negotiations went sour, and it sounds like he wanted guaranteed NHL minutes, and they were reluctant to give those guarantees. Rightfully so. Like, I don't know, I understand the sense of entitlement here. And then, things eventually changed, cut off communication. And what Elliot was saying was that he was hearing that right now, between McGroarty and his advisors and the Jets, there's no more, the communication has kind of gone awry. Like, it's almost like radio silence now. It went from being essentially, good relationship to not so good relationship in a short period of time. So he said that he's hearing McGroarty is on the trade block. The Jets at this point probably don't think they can sign him. They don't have that belief anymore. And at this point, they don't want to risk him staying in school long enough to become a free agent. And he appears ready to go to the NHL. So clearly, like I said, if this is all about his development and his plan, then it's about getting to the NHL ASAP. I think, just like with Cutter Gauthier, now, of course, Gauthier was traded during his NCAA season, a little bit different scenario. But I think if they trade him to a team that would say, yes, we'll take you right to our NHL roster and something that he'd be happy with, then I think he would sign and not go back to school this fall and go to the NHL. That's what the belief is. Now, can they work out a deal similar to what the Flyers got for Cutter Gauthier? They got lucky and got Jamie Drysdale. That was a good negotiation. But this does sound a lot like the Gauthier situation. And to be honest, another thing that I do wonder is because here's a tidbit you may not know, but Rutger McGroarty and Cutter Gauthier have been longtime best friends. So, is there influence there? Is he, or at the very least, even if Gauthier's not influencing him, because I can't say that for certain, I'm just speculating. Is it a case of him watching that scenario unfold and be like, okay, maybe it's for my best interest that I do the same thing and I get to an organization where I get to the NHL with a guaranteed spot faster? And so I personally don't seem to like the sense of entitlement from some of these young guys. I understand they're talented players. They're confident in themselves. They think they can make it. That's great. But, when things are handed to you too easy sometimes, it's not always good either. At the end of the day, though, that's my opinion on that is not really too relevant because this is a scenario the Jets are faced with. Got to think that some of the teams that are rebuilding would love to have this guy. Looking at the Ducks and his buddy Gauthier, they've made lots of deals. They got lots of defensemen. Maybe, I'm not sure that maybe they'd be willing to make a move. Montreal, we know, has been all over getting a top young player. Ken Hughes has had a lot of connections with NCAA players, given his past. The Sharks, they have Celebrini and Will Smith, obviously coming out of that same, NCAA hockey background. So, again, I wonder about them. Chicago would probably love a guy like that to mix in with Bedard. Even looking at some of the teams that may not be rebuilding, but would have maybe a sense for adding some youth to their lineup. Like I think of the New York Islanders, for example, they need to add some youth. I don't know that they would have an asset that would intrigue Winnipeg unless they wanted to offer up like a defenseman like a Ryan Pulock. I don't know if that would get it done, but we know Pulock, I've mentioned before, I wouldn't be shocked if it was a trade piece for the Islanders this offseason, and he is a Manitoba boy, so maybe at the end of the day that might be something that plays out, or maybe it's Pulock plus something else. I don't know. They might see McGroarty's value being higher right now, but that's a team that comes to mind as well. Team like even Minnesota, who's got cap problems but would like to have an infusion of skill and youth, could use a ELC like that, to keep things going there. You take a look at some other teams like, I see Leaf fans online. Everybody wants, it seems like, and I think it's just because the fan base is so big that you get a case of they want everybody. It seems, at least it feels that way. The Sens are a team that have had tons of American-born players. Like half their team is U.S. players that came through that system, so they haven't had issues getting their guys assigned. I don't know. Anyways, there's lots of teams out there that are going to be interested. I suspect that they're going to be looking for a hockey trade similar to what the Flyers got for Gauthier. It's funny, though, because when you get to the draft, you often hear about the Russian factor. A lot of teams are kind of scared off by, are they going to come over to North America? Or are they going to stay in Russia for 2, 3, 4 years, never come at all? But it's always the NCAA American-born players, like no offense to them, but it's always them that pulls these stunts. Take a look at the history. It's rare. Like Russian players might stay in the KHL for a year or two, sometimes 3, but eventually they do come more often than not. Look at Kirill Kaprizov, Ilya Sorokin, Igor Shesterkin. Meanwhile, you got a lot of American-born NCAA players that don't sign. Look all the way back to Jets captain Blake Wheeler. He did the same thing. Drafted by Arizona, didn't want to play there. Jimmy Vesey, Kevin Hayes, Adam Fox. All these guys have made their way to the Big Apple. Prime example here, Cutter Gauthier, and there's more. I think if I'm Winnipeg, and you look at Winnipeg have drafted a lot of these kind of players. Trouba, they lost Trouba because he didn't want to play there. Andrew Kopp didn't want to stay there long term. Really in their best interest. I think that one worked out okay, but they've had their issues. If I were them, I'd probably focus on taking some of the top Canadian talent or European talent that it's more likely to come, because it just seems like this demographic, for whatever reason, just seems like they don't want to go there. I mean, I know they got Kyle Connor. He's a U.S.-born player. He went through the college system. He's a guy that worked it out. But at the end of the day, it's unfortunate for Winnipeg. But I do understand. I'm not completely saying they're not at fault at all, because they do have some marginal players that have been blocking out some from prospects. And I'm as baffled too how they handled the Perfetti situation this past year. Not really a fan of that. I think they were way too hard on him. Could barely get in the lineup in the playoffs. Look at Vinny Heinola, blocked out by guys like Schmidt and Pionk. And you've got, they're unable to give McGroarty a full-time spot because of guys like Appleton. I know some have mentioned IFL, but I like IFL's game myself. I get it. So as much as I don't like the sense of entitlement and the gimme attitude, I deserve it. I think you should earn it. And yes, they're earning it by their play in college, but what's wrong with spending a little bit of time in the minors just to say, because the team won't say, yep, no matter what, you're staying in the NHL. I do have issue with that, but I also have issue with how they're handling their development. I think there's issues on both sides of the coin here. So that's the story on McGroarty. Don't be surprised if he's traded sometime in the near future. And for the Jets' sake, they're hoping to get back another top young player like we saw in the Gauthier deal. Now, we'll see what else happens. Quick update on Ottawa and Boston and the Linus Ullmark trade negotiations. We got word today that we found out supposedly, at least the rumor is, what Ullmark wants on a contract extension. He's probably looking at a 5-year extension deal around $35 million. So that would be like a 5 times 7. That's actually not bad considering what you're hearing some of the other top goalies in the league looking for. And for what he's done, his stats, President Trophy, all that type of stuff, like he's earned that type of deal. And to be honest, I think if the Senators can move off of the Korpisalo contract, I don't think they'd have issue there. Now, we don't know a full asking price either, but I honestly think that the Sens, it's so important for them to sort out their goaltending that they need to do whatever they can to make that happen. But with the Korpisalo buyout, if they have to go down the road of a buyout, they'd save $3.6 million this year, 3.1, 2.1, and 1.6 in the remaining 4 years of that deal. Then they'd have 4 more years tacked on at 1.3. So as much as it sucks to have that on your books for 8 years, as it stands, you're going to have it 4 years, and it's going to hinder you from taking a big step forward. And then, the next couple of years especially, you're going to save enough money to cover a big chunk of Ullmark's contract. And then the cap's going to be rising over that time frame. So, once you get to the final 4 to 5 years, you're looking at 1.6, 1.3, 1.3. You're not even going to notice that. Another 3 or 4 years down the road, that cap could be another $10, $12 million higher. And it's going to be less than 1% of your overall cap. I think if it comes down to it and you can't trade him, you got to do it. And if it means you get Ullmark and get him signed to a reasonable deal, you have to move forward. So we'll see what Staios works out there. In Los Angeles, too, John Hoven, pretty accurate, well-known reporter there covering the LA Kings, had mentioned on his Twitter feed, or his X feed, I guess, about Arthur Kaliyev. We know Kaliyev's a prime trade target, likely not going back to LA. He mentions Ottawa being a likely destination for him. So we'll see how that goes. I have no idea what the asking price would be. We do know that Kaliyev was a pretty solid goal scorer in junior. Where did he play junior? He played in Hamilton. Well, who owned Hamilton? Well, Michael Andlauer, who now owns the Senators. Who ran his team? Steve Staios. So they know him. There's certainly a connection there. And they know firsthand what kind of player that he is. They would have seen plenty of that. So at the end of the day, if they have confidence that he can make it with their team in the NHL, then it wouldn't be surprising. I can't see the asking price being too high. Maybe another prospect that would work better in LA. I don't know. But at the end of the day, Hoven connects the dots there from Kaliyev to Ottawa. So we'll see if that works out. Vegas, according to the fourthperiod.com, getting a lot of calls on Adin Hill and Logan Thompson. They're definitely not going to move both of them. They need a goalie, of course. But with the goalie market where it is, and with Kumper going to LA, they're solid now. Well, we'll see if they're solid. Either way, they've made their move. New Jersey got Markstrom, so that's done. Ottawa and Ullmark are, dancing here, trying to figure it out if they can get it done. Assuming that gets done, you're still going to have a few teams looking for goaltending help. You're looking at teams like Detroit, Toronto, Buffalo, who don't even necessarily... Toronto has to do something. But Elliot Friedman said he thinks Toronto is more likely to go into free agency and get like an Anthony Stolarz or a Laurent Brossoit, who we had mentioned before. That's the more likely scenario plays out for the Leafs. The Red Wings and the Sabres don't absolutely have to trade for a goalie, but they're looking at options to try to upgrade. And obviously, a guy like Logan Thompson now, he's coming with a real cheap contract. Him and Hill are both only signed for 1 more year. I don't know if Vegas makes a move there, which one they'd prefer to move. Thompson and Hill's numbers are very comparable. Hill makes a lot more money. Hill was also your Stanley Cup winning goalie where Thompson was on the bench. So I don't know how the Golden Knights feel about it. They might rather move Hill because it's a bigger cap hit and gives them more flexibility, whereas other teams might prefer Thompson because of the contract, especially a team like the Leafs. If they did make a move, I mentioned before, if Vegas and Toronto make a move, I do wonder about the Mitch Marner connection there, but because we said before, Vegas is a prime example of how the Leafs could move Marner, make it work, solve some goaltending issues, and get other pieces to make their roster a little bit more, just to create overall depth and just to kind of change the structure there a bit. So we'll see, but Vegas is definitely getting lots of calls, and But the handful of teams that are still trying to figure things out, there's not as many names left on the market. Philip Gustafson in Minnesota is another name to watch too. And obviously he doesn't make nearly as much money. Montreal, still very much connected according to 4thperiod.com, looking at some young forwards. As we mentioned, I do wonder with McGroarty now being on the market if they pivot that way. But the names that have been mentioned so far is Necas and Zegras. That there's still ongoing dialogue from what we've heard. They're still connected to both players, still trying to feel things out, see what the offers are. We know Carolina's looking for more of a hockey trade, whereas I think the Ducks would be willing to look more at more of a future base, but they want a young defenseman. It's been rumored, we said before, the asking price was rumored to be either Caden Gooley or David Reinbacher. So, again, I wonder how they could go about this. Like I said, it makes sense that maybe the asking prices of some of these guys are a little high. Necas has a lot more other teams in the mix there too. We've heard Seattle, we've heard Detroit. I think Boston to some degree, but there's lots of interest in the player for sure. The Carolina Hurricanes, though, have kind of been mentioning to teams if they don't have what they want, that they're not looking for futures. They want hockey trades. So we'll see how things work out, but that is all your news and rumors here for today. We'll be back. Lots of other stuff coming on the channel over the next couple of days. We're just over a week away from the draft, so I do have an upcoming a bigger mock draft. We're going a little bit deeper into the end of the first round now. So we have that and some other videos around draft prospects, goalie prospects especially, coming up here. And, of course, our team series for the offseason plan series. We'll try to wrap that up throughout the course of this coming week as well. Goal is to have that all published before we get to free agency, so we know kind of what their what their work to be done is, because it's all about what they're going to do. So once they start doing the work, it kind of defeats the purpose of the series. And I still got to think 7 or 8 teams left to go. So let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Like I said, all kinds of great content coming up here on the channel. It's going to be a very busy week. We're not far away from the key points of the season. The Stanley Cup coming out, the draft, free agency, all in the next week or so. So as we say, buckle up. The news cycle is going to get real busy. So it means you're going to be seeing my face on your screen, all kinds, lots here as we produce lots of content to talk about everything going on. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.